Was Jesus' relationship with his Heavenly Father automatic? Might be a question that you've never given a lot of thought to, but it actually matters in our life. You know, if you've ever wondered if the routine, monotonous days of your life, even the struggle days in your life matter, then hang with me through this video, because I'm going to tie in this teaching about Jesus from Luke 2:52 and into those. I'm hoping that will speak life into the routine days of your life and mine. And so let's look at Luke 2:52 together. This is the New Living Translation, and it says, Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and all the people. Now, as we look at that verse, there's actually a lot of different elements that make perfect sense, okay? For starters, Jesus grew in wisdom, right? So this passage was written right after Jesus was found teaching in the temple, right? And he was 12, 13 years old, something like that. Mary and Joseph had been looking for him. They come all the way back to Jerusalem to get him, right? And he says, don't you know, I must be about my Father's business. Of course, speaking about his real Father, God the Father. And so that's the context of this passage. And Luke is telling us that at this time, from this time on, he returned to Nazareth with his parents, his stepdad and mother, and he grew in wisdom. He advanced in wisdom. That makes perfect sense, right? We understand that as time goes on, as you age, you will gain knowledge, and with that knowledge, you will gain a better understanding of how to apply that knowledge in practical and constructive ways in your life. Wisdom, right? And so he also says he grew in stature. Well, we get that too. Okay, he's a man. He was born a man born in the flesh, and so you're going to grow year after year. If you're healthy and things are right, your body is going to grow, right? And so he's adding inches on, and his body is developing and growing, and so that makes sense. It's this next statement that I want to draw our attention to. It says that he is growing and increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and all the people. Now I'm going to skip the God part for a second, because that's really what I want to anchor in for this video. But we understand what it means to grow in favor with people, right? Your reputation. Jesus was a carpenter, and so he had to establish a good reputation with people, right? In his business dealings, he had to prove to people over time and through various experiences that, listen, that Jesus was reliable, that he was trustworthy, that he could be counted on, that he was a man of integrity and honesty. So this is our Jesus. He's growing in wisdom. He's growing in stature. He's growing in favor with the people. All things that we would expect. Something that maybe you don't expect, though, is right there where it says growing in favor with God. How does Jesus, the Son of God, actually God himself in the flesh, grow in favor with God? I think we know what that means as for ourselves, right? As people, but Jesus, the Son of God, have you ever thought of that? Maybe in your mind, subconsciously, without realizing it, you just thought, well, you know, at some point, as a child, maybe not a baby, but a child, he learns to talk. He gains this wisdom, right, about who he is. That he's the Son of God, that all of a sudden he just has the closest, most intimate relationship with the Father, right, from there on. But Luke tells us that he actually grew in his relationship with the Father. And so I want to zero in on that, okay? This idea, let's look at two words for today's study, and that is growth and favor. Well, growth, we know what that is, okay? That implies that's advancement, right? That's increasing, growing. But we also know that it implies a process and time, okay? So you think about the human body, think about plants, right? Think about animals. There is a process that takes place, and there is time that goes by. And so the same is true of Jesus. It was not immediate and it was not automatic. His relationship, his favor with the Father, and we're going to talk about favor in a second, it took time and it was a process. It wasn't just like a one and done type thing. And so now let's talk about favor, okay? Favor comes from the Greek word charis or charis, and it actually is interpreted in the New Testament many times as grace, okay? And so it means relational delight. I mean, it's very healthy here to think about, if you're a parent, your own relationship with your child and how that grows over time, and your delight in that child and their delight in you. And I know, the teen years, it can be very subjective, but beyond that, there is a delight that grows over time, right? That relationship deepens. Now, you love that child, I mean, with every fiber of your being from the moment it's born, right? But you still understand that relationship deepens over time. It's the same thing with God and Jesus, all right? And so that's what it is. Favor is just that. It's approval. It's also this idea of living in alignment with each other. So Jesus and God, they had the same mission, right? They had the same mindset, the same vision for the future. And so the biggest thing here, guys, is favor in this text is not a scorecard. It's relational closeness. And so as we continue on here thinking about this concept, relationship's not automatic, it's not assumed, it's something that's practiced, right? Trust deepens, obedience is learned, intimacy grows over time. We understand that. Now, there's another text I want to throw at you, and that's Hebrews 5:8. Now, listen to what Hebrews 5:8 says in the New Living. It says, even though Jesus was God's son, he learned obedience through the things he suffered. Now, he learned obedience. So he wasn't just automatically obedient, right? That's not a title that you give to someone that isn't obedient over time, right? That continues to be obedient time and time again. So Jesus is showing this. He's obedient day in and day out, when it's easy and when it's hard, if it's ever easy to be obedient. But when it's easy and when it's hard, he is enduring through that process. And because of that, he's learning obedience. Now, he learned it through the things he suffered. Now, what does that word suffered mean? Well, that means experienced. That means endured, things that he experienced in his life and that he had to endure through. Sometimes literally suffering. I want you to think about the time where he fasted in the wilderness, right? 30 days he fasted. That, man, if I go one day without food, that's suffering for me, okay? Jesus went 30 days in the wilderness. He suffered, but he learned obedience through that suffering, right? Even the endurance of the cross. He learned even to the end, he was obedient to the Father, right? So many things that he went through in his life. He just fatigue, right? We see this in John 4:6, where he became tired. And then we see in John 11:35 where he wept, right? And so he had human emotions. He had human limitations. And he had to endure and learn to be obedient through all of those things. He had relational issues. There were people around him, his own family, that didn't understand him. Many misunderstandings with people around him that he had to learn obedience through, right? As he went through those things. And then not to mention waiting. Listen, no one even knew who Jesus was for the most part for 30 years of his life. He had to wait. He had to be patient. He had to learn obedience through the things that he suffered, the things that he experienced in his life. And so, no, he didn't sin, right? He was sinless. We know this about Jesus. But that doesn't mean that obedience and relationship and favor with God was automatic. It was a process that he had to go through just like we do. And that's what I want to draw it back to for us, okay? We find here that Luke says he grew in favor with God. Hebrews tells us how he grew in favor with God. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, guys, how many times have you been waiting on God? Maybe you're waiting on God right now. You're doing the right thing, right? Maybe you're serving faithfully in ministry somewhere, but maybe you're a pastor or a teacher, or a Sunday school teacher, or you're doing something on social media to speak truth and life and love over people, and you're just waiting. You're waiting for the fruit of that, right? You're waiting for God to do something from that. You're waiting. And look, that's exactly what Jesus did for 30 years of his life. He just walked with the Father, right? And it wasn't until the last three that the miracles came, right? And the great following that he had. Don't forget that. Don't forget that in your own life. If you're a parent and you're raising your children, look, I'm a parent of 5 that range from 13 to 1. I get it. And that's a labor of love, right? And you're working with those children day in and day out. You're trying to correct them and keep them on the right path. And sometimes it just feels like, man, I'm getting nowhere. Am I even doing this right? Listen, endurance, faithfulness, obedience. This is where you are gaining favor over time, day by day, with your Heavenly Father, which is another way of saying your relationship is growing. You may be doing the right thing. You may be doing the right thing quietly. No one's noticing you. No one's thanking you. You're not going viral, right? But look, you're learning faithfulness without visibility. Jesus, that's obedience. That's gaining favor with the Father day by day. Look, guys, this is not about justification. I'm not talking about salvation here. I'm talking about your relationship with the Father and how closely that ties to Jesus himself and the life that he lived for us. So stay faithful. That's my encouragement for you as we look at Jesus' own life and his own walk with the Father. Stay faithful. Be obedient. Look, I think we're tempted, all of us are tempted to think that God is never closer to us than in the burning bush, right? Think of Moses. Oh man, he was right there, the presence of God, the burning bush. But look, he spent 40 years on the backside of a desert preparing for not even the burning bush moment, what was to come, right? And so think about David. David was crowned king as a boy, right? And yet proclaimed king, anointed king by Samuel the prophet, and yet he spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves. Jesus, like I said before, no one even knew him until he was 30 years old, other than his family and friends and people in his community, his customers. I want you to think about that. Your life, guys, right now, the day-to-day, the monotony, the routine, the schedule, even the struggles, and maybe especially the struggles that you're going through. Maybe you have a health problem. Maybe it's some kind of a sin struggle. And I know Jesus, he didn't have sin in his life, but he was still tempted in every way, just like we are, right? And you may be wondering, man, when am I going to get the victory over this? When am I going to get healing from this? And you're just being faithful. Look, it's that moment, it's in those moments where you're increasing in your favor with the Heavenly Father. Man, I hope that's encouraging to you. Stay faithful, keep going, endure, suffer even as Jesus did for the sake of that relationship with your Father.